Please, if you prefer to read the document directly, you can check the description section of the YouTube entry for this video. History beckons and I will not be silent. A Rejoinder by Desmond Chinedu Nweke. This is my humble response to a recent article by the erudite governor of Anambra State, Professor Chukwuma Soludo. The article, with the title indicated above, raised several issues that just cannot be left to rest. Hence this timely approach, even if to help give better orientation to the expected second volume of the article. We are grappling with a life and death situation in Nigeria right now. As a result, I am not here to incite anyone's academic fancy. Rather, I am going to be as simple as possible because the Nigerian street, whose lives are at stake, should be able to participate in the discussion too. Therefore, in keeping with this commitment to simplicity and clarity, I am taking on the points as serially as I can. First, let's kindly commit to approaching this issue without looking at faces. A major temptation that hides in the Soludo article is to think that if the author is a professor, a former central bank governor, and a successor to Mr. P2B, who is here in the eye of the storm, then Soludo's views on the matter cannot be faulted. But is that true? Certainly not. So if you have such a mindset, I humbly invite you to jettison it and approach this with an open-minded attitude. Do you know why you should do this? It's because the current situation in Nigeria requires more of the truth than theory. Once you have decided to be purely issue-based regarding this matter, then come with me as I take you through the well-choreographed and long article in question here. The Anambra investment question. The Soludo article kicks off with a line mocking Mr. P2B's claim to have left some good investment portfolio for the people of Anambra, just as he did some days earlier on in a TV interview. To that effect, I invite everyone to look at this document said to have been a handover letter Mr. Obi left for his successor as the governor of Anambra State. As you can see, the document shows that the Obi administration in Anambra left some 27 billion naira in local currency investments and some 26.5 billion naira in foreign currency investments. Then, still going by the document under study here, the administration left over 86 billion naira as the net balance in the state government coffers. Please, dear reader, kindly take note of those documented figures above because we are going to be using them later on. That document cited above has been circulating online where Governor Soludo said the tirades of the Obi supporters came to his august attention. As a result, I was expecting that Governor Soludo must have seen the document in circulation. As a result, also in his article, I expected Governor Soludo to talk about the investments of the Obi administration with reference to this document and the figures it claims. This is what I think would have made sense. The economist in Professor Soludo should have referenced that document and those figures instead of just making what to me is an immature ridicule of a topic as serious as a multi-billion naira investments exchanging hands. If you don't understand my point here yet, consider how Governor Soludo casually placed the word investment in a special quote in the first paragraph of his article. Nevertheless, let me presume that Governor Soludo didn't see the alleged handover document before publishing his article. The possibility of this, though, is ridiculously low, but let's still assume that the negligible minority probability is where the reality lies here, meaning, well, it's possible that the former CBN governor didn't see the document on social media at least. Of course, he would eventually have to explain this by himself, but where we are accepting that Professor Soludo didn't see the alleged handover note, I am now showing it to him. So let him write the second volume of his article referencing the document, whether it is real or fake. And if it turns out that the document is real or that there is a real version at all, I would like to know why Governor Soludo found it necessary to criticize Mr. P2B for leaving a net balance to enable a smooth takeoff for the next administration, but the same Soludo failed to acknowledge the investments even if no handover note surfaced in the public domain regarding it. For me, I think that if an administration left both an investment in huge amounts, over 53 billion naira, and a net balance over 86 billion naira in the coffers, there could hardly be a more balanced thing for that administration to have done. realized that this was happening in March 2014 when one United States dollars exchanged for 165 Nigerian naira. So it would be unfair to criticize the administration in question for leaving savings in the state coffers while the people were still poor, as if anyone should save only after solving all the problems they have. Who ever solved every problem they had? Which person ever waited to solve every problem they had before saving some money? And in the case of the Obi administration in Anambra, was the money left in the state account not still meant to improve the lots of Anambrarians? Was it not far better than looting the money as 99.9% of other Nigerian politicians would have done in a similar circumstance? Almost every Nigerian political office holder think alike by not caring about the next administration of the office. Is the government not supposed to be a continuum from one administration to another? These are questions for Governor Soludo and those celebrating his article. Next, the wordplay on the attack on Soludo's hometown and what it may reveal. To start with, I condemn the reported recent attacks on Governor Soludo's hometown in toto. At the same time, I feel highly disappointed at the governor's desperate attempt to insinuate that Mr. Obi may have masterminded the ugly incident. If you are still arguing with me here, consider the following lines in the article here under review. And I quote, "Some people even suggest that a gunman who went to attack a checkpoint at my hometown on Sunday 12th November but were gunned down was part of the mob reaction. I used to think that for decent people, certain conducts are off limits and that in Anambra, politics is not warfare," unquote. The article said, emphasis on mine. As you know, insinuation is communication. So who are the decent people being insinuated here? Lives were lost in the case cited. Thus, it would make sense for official public communication regarding the issue to be clearer to help in unraveling the crimes that took place instead of being muddled up to achieve some ulterior ends, as seems to be the case here. Down the line, Soludo's article went ahead to mention P2B in a manner that makes it clear to an average high schooler that he meant just the person mentioned. I'm talking about the line where Professor Soludo would be narrating how an Igbo statesman advised him to ignore the negative media mentions he got after the interview he granted. And I quote, "A respected Igbo elder statesman who called advised that I should just ignore what he described as P2B and his social media mob," Governor Soludo narrated. "Here, Your Excellency, you are making me in particular think this is the same mob you earlier said attacked your hometown in their offline reality." Somewhere down the paragraphs, Governor Soludo will be making remarks that seem to be a further attempt at substantiating this same point, such as one, and I quote, "But he, P2B, must moderate the desperation as exhibited by his social media mob. There is a limit to propaganda. A mob action often reflects the character of its leader. No one has a monopoly of social media violence and no one should play God. Life won't end by February, March 2003, unquote. 2. And I quote, "It won't happen by desperately jumping from one party to another or by unleashing a social media mob on everyone who slightly disagrees with you," unquote. Therefore, I think that Nigerians would want Governor Soludo to come out clear on this. After all, Nigerians need to scrutinize Obi fully right now since he is asking to be the president in a few months. Therefore, dear Professor Soludo, do you honestly think that Mr. Peter Obi has a hand in the brutal attacks that happened in your hometown on November 12, 2022? If yes, what are your reasons for the suspicion? Don't mind, we know it's suspicion, but make your point clear. While we await Professor Soludo's response here, this is what Nigerians need to place at the back of their heads, far from anyone's deception. In the murky waters of Nigerian politics, we know how highly possible it is that a desperate P2B antagonist may have sponsored the recent attacks on Soludo's hometown just to make people think exactly what Soludo is insinuating here. So why did the erudite professor descend so low as to insinuate a point that cannot be validly established yet? Is it and is he a part of a scheme to muddy Mr. Obi's current reputation by the corrupt establishment just to frustrate the latter's current presidential bid? Governor Soludo probably hoped to get away with the subtlety he manifested there, but no, this is the Web 3 era Nigeria we are stepping into, where the citizens will have to live and think fully independently of the political class if still existing. So, Your Excellency Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo, sir, once again, I humbly request you to honorably explain the point you meant to make in those words of yours I just quoted. Then, if by any means you meant to insinuate that Mr. Obi's hand may be in the brutal attacks that happened in your hometown after a television interview, you need to come out straight and say it so that we can examine your reasons in an informed public light. In case no one has realized it, we are here dealing with an entirely new era, and it's democracy. There is a brand new level of political consciousness among the Nigerian masses, both online and off. It's no longer an era when Nigerian leaders were held unaccountable for their words and actions while in official positions that represent us all. Soludo was speaking publicly and from an official standpoint, and not in some beer parlor conversation, making it necessary that he communicates clearly rather than subtly, especially in matters as grave as these. So, Your Excellency, over to you. After you must have responded to the above accordingly, we may talk about what I believe is an equally pedestrian attempt to play on the people's religious emotions to establish your fair point. That would be pure sacrilege, but let's leave that side until you have given your response in your volume 2. On the published conclusion that Peter Obi is going nowhere in his presidential bid. In the article where Governor Soludo was talking about Peter Obi and his social media mob, he also mentioned that the said elder statesman also held as follows, and I quote, "Everyone knows that he, Peter Obi just mentioned, is going nowhere, but they are looking for who to blame," unquote. Everyone knows? Now, here above is a conclusion made, published and documented already in Soludo's article. What does this tell us as Nigerians on the street? For me here, Professor Soludo inadvertently gave a lot away. Does Governor Soludo seem to know about an underground scheme to edge out the overwhelming Nigerian populations that are calling for Mr. Peter Obi to be elected as their president? Polls upon polls, both online and off, have confirmed this. So how come Governor Soludo and an Igbo statesman, possibly an ex-governor for being a statesman, dared to come to such a conclusive position that Obi is going nowhere, with the overwhelming numbers of the Nigerian population that has been rooting for him? Here are other statements taken directly out of the Soludo article that further confirms this clearly incriminating position of his and his statesman. Number one, and I quote, "Let's be clear, Peter Obi knows that he can't and won't win. He knows the game he's playing, and we know too. And he knows that we know. The brutal truth, and some will say, God forbid, is that there are two parties, seriously contesting for president. The rest is exciting drama." Again, and I quote, "What is our plan B when Peter Obi loses in February 2023, unquote. Note, Soludo here talks about when, not if, Obi loses the election next year. He is that sure, irrespective of the countless Nigerians showing overwhelming support for the Obi presidential bid, unquote. For the Obi presidential bid. Again, and I quote, "Some people prefer that we should play the ostrich while Peter Obi toys with the collective destiny of over 60 million Igbos. Yes, you pray that he wins, but what if he fails as he is certain to," unquote. Again, what makes Governor Soludo and the statesman so certain that Peter Obi wouldn't win the 2023 election despite the widespread popular acclaim Obi has enjoyed across tribes, religions, and even parties in recent months? Is it now statesmen rather than the people who should decide who occupies elected political positions in democracies such as we are supposed to have in Nigeria right now? What would such a premature conclusion by Soludo and his statesman friend on an election that is still some 3 months away mean for our democracy? Can we still trust the process vis-a-vis these terribly undemocratic verbal displays by these people in our corridors of governance? I asked these questions having in mind some recent document-backed allegations showing duplicate voter entries in the INEC voter database. And this is happening in the region, in the northern region mostly. Here are some samples I obtained. For me, if Professor Soludo and his dear friend, statesman, are so sure that Obi is going nowhere despite a number of Nigerians who want Obi to go somewhere, which is Aso Rock, then it is clear that the people are already getting shortchanged behind the scenes through a conspiracy that Governor Soludo is aware of or even a part of. Or how could Soludo be so certain that there are two parties seriously contesting for president? The rest is exciting drama, obviously excluding Obi from his list of serious candidates, when in fact Obi and also Yelesore has been the most active presidential candidates in terms of engagement with the masses and more. So why do you exclude the ones we see to be the most serious and say that those who are not as serious as that are the only serious ones? I also make this inquiry considering that Governor Soludo at a point in his article appeared to advocate for the presidential candidate of a major political party known for cash and carry politics and now appearing recently in the poor light of the present federal government's abysmal performance. Wrote Soludo in his article here on the review, and I quote, "The polls also show that he, Peter Obi, is taking votes away mostly from PDP. Indeed, if I were Asiwaju Tinubu, I would even give Peter Obi money as someone heading one of the departments of his campaign, because Obi is making Tinubu's pathway to victory much easier by indirectly pulling down PDP. It is what it is," unquote. And you remember that Soludo also managed money for one of the federal government administrations of this cash and carry party, so he is certainly privy to most of the monies that exchange hands under that hugely corrupt administration, such as the $16 billion alleged to have been spent on improving electricity. And today we don't have this electricity. As you know, a lot can go in the dark recesses of a human mind. For me, one of Soludo's reasons for attacking his one predecessor with such an enduring and soaring national reputation for high performance in public office might just be this: he is afraid that a P2B Aso Rock might visit his secret dossiers. Yes, that's my suspicion, and I made it clear. Otherwise, I just can't see any reasonable grounds to be mounting such steep attacks against someone generally reported to have been one of the best political names in the country for many years until now. After all, we are aware that this is not the first time Mr. P2B would be severely persecuted from his home front, not for doing any wrong, but surprisingly for doing the right thing. For instance, wasn't Obi the only Nigerian governor who was ever ejected from office on 2 occasions just because he refused to take part in robbing the people he was elected to serve via a humongous budget pardon? So the present avalanche of attacks against Obi hardly surprises us, because in the land of the devils, the only angel is bound to be treated as the only criminal around. As Jesus Christ is quoted to have said, and I quote, "No prophet has honor in his hometown and among his kings," unquote. The reason is that real prophets don't follow the trends. They follow the truth wherever it leads. So they immediately stand out as persistent condemnation of those who weakly follow the trends. As a confirmation, Jesus himself was later killed by his own brothers for being positively and significantly different. A similar fate was suffered by numerous other special people in history, from Joseph to Prophet Muhammad to Abraham Lincoln and more. So we understand the trend when we see this one bright light amid the thick political darkness in Nigeria being often at the receiving end of so much persecution from the political class. This is for those who are saying that if Peter Obi's state governor would attack him so strongly, then Obi must be evil. This brings us to the next point in this emergency response. Soludo expressed a familiar but unfair opposition voice against the support base of the Labour Party presidential candidate. As a further confirmation that Professor Soludo may be far more compromised than he would want the world to know, here is one of the many unfair social media voices he expressed. he called out the P2B support base for the, and I quote, exhibition of desperation, intolerance, and attempt to bully everyone who expresses the slightest of dissent, and I unquote, describing this attitude of the P2B supporters as reprehensible. The former central bank governor went ahead to say that, and I quote, this is Hitler in the making. When the revered Archbishop Chukwuma stated that in Enugu State they were not obedient, he was ferociously bullied on social media. Any dissent is tagged a saboteur, or in my case it will be that I want to contest for president after office, or that I am envious of P2B, unquote. This is a typical opinion of the Obi political antagonists on social media that this professor just expressed. But how fair is this opinion relative to what the support basis of the other frontline presidential candidates are known to have done? For instance, in Lagos State, a physically challenged person was physically assaulted for showing support for the Obi presidential bid. More than once, Obi supporters have been physically attacked in the southeast, where Soludo is currently a security stakeholder. And more physical attacks have been targeted at Obi supporters in Lagos and various parts of the country. Even I, too, have been physically assaulted in Delta State just for showing open support for the Obi presidential bid. So what are the online verbal attacks by the Obi supporters as described in Governor Soludo's article compared to those several heinous physical attacks targeting Obi supporters? How many times has Governor Soludo found the time to condemn those unwarranted physical attacks on Obi's support base, even in the southeast where Soludo is supposed to be at the forefront of security responsibility? Yet, Professor Soludo found the time and energy to describe mere social media vituperations, independent social media vituperations by the Obi supporters, in such damning word use. What could be more ungodly than this? Yet Soludo's article is full of references to God, reaffirming the religious card as an old trick that the corrupt establishment has used to keep the masses under control while they plunder their future undisturbed from decade to decade. This brings us to yet another serious point in the Soludo article. Governor Soludo showed a poor attitude of placing partisan and ethnic agenda over deep-seated national interests. Governor Soludo revealed one of the issues that are clearly behind his attacks on Mr. P2B. This is it. Obi left APGA and refused to return to the party. Going by his revelations, when Governor Soludo tried to talk his predecessor P2B into returning to APGA to keep pushing a narrow partisan and regional agenda with him, the latter declined, urging him to only allow a level playing field in the Anambra political atmosphere. Anyone can have the opinion about Mr. P2B's transit from APGA to PDP and LP. For many out there, Obi is a political prostitute for so doing. But here is the truth. Obi's antecedents, coupled with his political transits, are all but a manifestation of the desperation of Nigerians to have a country they can proudly call theirs anywhere. I will explain this further. Let me begin from myself. I am so desperate to see a country that works for all the citizens to the extent that if Obi moving from one party to another is what it will take to realize the Nigeria of my dream, then any political sin he commits in doing so should pale side by side with its gains. Quite understandably, I have also met countless Nigerians who hold a similar view. Indeed, if you like to, you can put it to vote and see what would be the outcome. Nigerians would rather have a country where things work out well than let this be sacrificed on the altar of some partisan and or ethnic allegiances. This is one desperation among the Nigerian masses that clearly finds expression in Obi's, yes, desperate political transits. Or would it have been right for Obi to keep pursuing an ethnic agenda in APGA while the Nigerians he seeks to help rescue are dying in the inferno of a vicious cycle of an absolute failure of governance? Would it have been right for Obi to throw up his hands helplessly and allow the PDP presidential ticket get sold out to yet another cash and carry politician warming up to turn the country's treasury into a personal investment? So Obi should have joined an infamous chorus that keeps recycling a band of people who insist on buying rather than earning political mandates simply because they see political positions as lucrative business opportunities to invest in. Would it have been right for Obi to let the sleeping dog lie in these instances, even while Nigerians are still dying in their countless numbers in the conflagration of extremely selfish cycles of leadership, nay, rulership? Anyone can now see that Obi's desperate political transit perfectly mirrors a similar instance of desperation among the Nigerian people in the present scheme of realities. So it doesn't matter to us as the Nigerian people if he stepped on some political and ethnic toes doing this. As Mrs. Aisha Yusuf would say, and I quote, "Party allegiance is worse than an abusive marriage," unquote. So it's very ungodly for anyone to keep obsessing over partisan and ethnic allegiances when the welfare of the entire country is so urgently at stake. Mind you, we are talking about human lives here, so away with any political correctness that will keep Nigerians perishing unnecessarily. As we talk, more and more Nigerian families are unable to afford a square meal a day. Among other things, this is because farmers have been scared from going into the hinterlands to put our rich arable soils to use in the past 7 years plus, and it's a result of a myopic leadership that is using an elected position belonging to all Nigerians to push an old tribal domination agenda. Now, in such a desperate situation as this, Governor Soludo exposes a disappointing mental shallowness by insisting on a tribal partisan agenda that even Soludo himself is not expecting to make any headway at a time we so urgently need real positive change. Hear what the professor of economics wrote, and I quote, "During our meeting, I reminded him of my proposal to him to come and contest under APGA. More importantly, I told him, possibly to his surprise, that I did not make the proposal in the belief that he will win in 2023, but that it will give us the opportunity to get our people organized as a bargaining force with him leading the effort since I was busy as governor," unquote. Here, Governor Soludo revealed a major mindset difference between him and Mr. Obi. Here is someone expecting Obi to keep dilly-dallying and wasting time with more failed ethnic agenda when Obi, like an overwhelming majority of Nigerians, is passionately desperate to see a country that works as soon as yesterday. Let the people judge which of these two mindsets is more worthy of respect, which one is more responsible towards public good and national interest, which one is more people-oriented. Your guess is as good as mine. Is it any wonder that there is such a spontaneous and widespread response to Obi's presidential bid among the Nigerian masses? The masses obviously see themselves identified with Peter Obi, unlike most other politicians who generally think like Governor Soludo by placing narrow partisan and ethnic interests over the people's real-life welfare just because they, the privileged politicians, feel they have all they want in life. Contrary to this predominant poor attitude among the Nigerian political class, Obi is one privileged fellow we know who is empathetic enough to feel what the unprivileged Nigerians feel in their day-to-day struggles. This is clearly what informs his desperation to step on sectional toes to bring common good to the people. Don't think we are fools just because we are the masses and you are even in office. On the contrary, we know those who truly care when we listen to them. Our Igbo elders have a saying that you don't need a mirror to see a hand bangle. Ironically, Soludo even seems to think that Peter Obi is the one pursuing an ethnic agenda by flying the Labour Party flag in the 2023 Nigerian presidential race. Consider Soludo's reference to the Igbo signature Nzogbu Nzogbu politics, which he thinks to be what the Obi presidential bid is a part of. So is it really true that people are likely to think everyone thinks as they think? Says Soludo, and I quote, "Every 4 years we resurface with emotive Nzogbu Nzogbu politics dance. It is our turn dance, but without organization or strategy, and fizzle out afterwards while others work 24/7 strategizing and organizing," unquote. On the contrary, Nigerians' support for the Obidati 2023 ticket seems to be more spontaneous than premeditated, not to talk of planned. It is more of a purely spontaneous manifestation of national than ethnic consciousness. No wonder Obi couldn't do it with a party that has a huge ethnic tag on it like APGA. Rather, he is pursuing it under a party every Nigerian worker from Maiduguri to Port Harcourt can equally identify with. So how is this an ethnic agenda, as Soludo is guilty of while accusing P2B of? Obi's support base clearly rises out of genuine trust by the generality of Nigerians than being a function of some political calculations by a clique sitting in some government house. Nigerians obviously seem to know who among the top contenders they can leave their wallets or their kids with to keep for them, meaning such a person could keep their country for them too. So asking about the option our Igbo patriarchs such as Azikiwe and Okpara would have favored, I believe they would have favored what is in the interest of the generality of the Nigerian people rather than what is in the interest of a political or an ethnic clique, no matter how highly placed, whether they are statesmen or whoever. And that's the exact path that Obi is treading, as I explained before in this response. Conclusion. There are many other issues raised in the recent article published by the current governor of Anambra State which has come under scrutiny here. I couldn't have addressed all the loose ends in the highly erudite but poorly conceived article, but let me take it that the points I have addressed are the most pressing for now. Expect more from me as more events unfold, such as when Governor Soludo publishes his second volume. Here above, I have asked Governor Soludo to affirm or deny, using economics worthy facts and figures, the popular claims that the P2OB administration left behind investments and net balances in the scale of multi-billion naira for Anambra people. I have also asked Governor Soludo of Anambra State to throw more light on his obvious insinuation that Obi might have had a hand in the heinous attacks that took place in the governor's hometown on November 12. Both the investment questions and the attacks are too serious to be only mumbled in state public communication. I have also gone ahead to point out what I consider clear manifestation of Governor Soludo's ulterior and unwholesome political motives for the recent choreographed media attacks he has directed against who is unarguably his most illustrious predecessor. Finally, I have endeavored to point out Soludo's narrow-mindedness as shown in the article here under review. Such narrow-mindedness has given Professor Soludo away as someone who lacks empathy towards the suffering Nigerian masses and therefore can afford to pursue narrow partisan or ethnic agenda at the expense of extremely urgent national interests. So I am open to replying to whoever has anything against the points I've raised so far in this response. Thank you. About me, I am a researcher and socio-political commentator. I currently work in the area of safety economics. That's the much I want to tell about myself for now, because what matters at the moment is not me, but the issue at stake. Therefore, on the subject I have written about here, I'd like to interact with readers publicly via my Twitter handle at DrDes101 or directly, where necessary, via my email drdes101@gmail.com. Thank you all.